review, you can do that too. So as always, we are so appreciative of the community church allowing us to come and use their beautiful, beautiful sanctuary here. So with that, what I'd like to do is welcome Dr. Prevet up to give us our invocation.
Good afternoon. On behalf of the congregation here at Community Church, I do want to welcome you. We're so glad that we have a facility here that's open up to everyone. As our church is celebrating its 30th year here, we have been at this a while, and this is a part of who we are as a community church. We want to be a hub of ministry here, and so we welcome you today. We're glad that you're here. If you would pray with me. Gracious God, we're so grateful for the beauty of this day. This is one of the reasons we moved here, was to enjoy days like today. And we ask your blessings upon this time. We're grateful for a community that can come together and discuss ideas and make plans for living together and serving you. We ask now that you bless this time. In your name we pray. Amen.
Thank you so much, Pastor. All right, so just a few quick notes from me. Just wanted to let you know from an HOA perspective, we do have the 2019 board set and ready to go. The current board approved the slate, and that has been announced in a number of different communication venues. And then on November 29th, we will have the HOA board election and our volunteer recognition. That'll be 5 o'clock at the Yacht Club. And you know, it's really amazing. Every year we talk about this, but we will be recognizing over 100 volunteers. And that's what it takes to make all of this happen in the HOA. So if you know anybody who volunteers, just give them a little thanks, because they're the ones that make this all happen. Okay, so just a quick rundown of what our agenda is going to look like today. First off, each of the candidates will come up and they'll do a 5-minute self-introduction, and then we will have them come up again and do and answer prepared questions, and we'll go through that. But there's one specific questions, and you have all the questions on the back of your agenda, just so you know. They'll all be answering question number 1, and then they have a choice of 2 others that they can answer. And then finally, we'll have a little bit of time left over for your questions afterwards. So one of the things that we wanted to make sure that people understood was, what exactly is it? What are the responsibilities of POA board members versus the staff that supports the POA and supports the community. So, and these are also on the back of your agenda, but what we decided to do was talk to the board members that are currently board members and ask them, what do you think are the most important responsibilities that the POA board has? And these are the ones that they selected. And they each, interestingly enough, they each sent these independently to us, and many of them were right on track and had the exact same answers. So the first one, develop strategic direction, work with long-range planning committee on the development and renewal of the long-range strategic vision. Hire and direct and review the performance of the general manager. Exercise legal and fiduciary responsibilities per POA's governing documents and applicable laws. Finalize and approve annual budgets, 5-year plans, annual assessments, and user fees. And finally, encourage feedback from members. So that's good to know. They do care what we think. So with that, I will welcome up our first candidate, Linda Bailey.
Thank you. I'm not going to spend a lot of time talking about my educational background or my professional career, because you can find all that on my brochure, which is out in the lobby. I do, however, want to tell you a couple of personal things about myself, since I saw on Carla's flyer that she graduated from the University of Kansas. I was born in Michigan and grew up in Lexington, Kentucky, where my father was a professor at the University of Kentucky. For those of you who may not know it, in the Commonwealth of Kentucky, UK basketball is absolutely king. My husband and I are great football and basketball fans. He went to Ohio State, so we have Ohio State football. My undergraduate degree is from UK, so we have the best of both worlds. We've gone to probably 12 or 13 men's Final Fours, including the one in 2012, where Kentucky played Kansas. Do you remember that one, Carla? I didn't think she would. Well, in case, just to remind her, one of the traditions, recent traditions, is that the winning team gets to take the floor back from the championship game. And Kentucky took the center part and put it into their new men's basketball room. And then they sold the green parts that were around the outside. So I've got a little piece of the 2012 championship floor signed by our coach, John Calipari. And Carla, if you want to touch it, I'll let you do so after the program. What I want to do with the remainder of my 5 minutes is to tell you why I want to run for the POA board and to answer the first part of question 1, which is if you could accomplish only one thing if elected, what would that be? Let me start by saying that if I could only accomplish one thing if elected, I would be very disappointed and consider myself really a failure as a board member. I also think that all 4 questions that we were asked to address are related. I have many things that I want to accomplish as a board member, but the number 1 priority is strategic planning, which is number 2 on that list of board responsibilities. Long-range strategic planning based on data must be hardwired into the board's annual governance process. On the list of 20 POA board responsibilities, you can see they're all important, but I think strategic planning is the most important. First, I want to take my hat off to the Long Range Planning Committee for the tremendous work they've done this year in helping develop a new, updated long-range strategic plan. They are due to present their final report to the POA board in either January or February, and I really want to be a part of that board team that looks at those recommendations and comes back to all of the property owners for input before making a final decision. This may come as a surprise to Bruce, but in some ways I feel sorry for our current board members who are now having to address the need for very expensive infrastructure maintenance and the demand for new amenities such as boat slips, more parking, and meeting places. As I've participated in the Financial Advisory Committee meetings this last week to look at departmental budget requests for 2019, it has become apparent to me, and I think to many others who were in attendance, that we simply cannot afford to fund all of the major projects that are under consideration. Many of the requests have to do with maintenance, some have to do with new amenities. What I would suggest is the board, in order to improve its strategic planning process, the board needs to set aside time at the beginning of each calendar year to focus on how it's going to govern as a board. With the potential for 2 to 3 new board members every year, I think it's imperative that the board step back from day-to-day business and focus instead on how it's going to govern. I will say more of that later because my time is up, but I think that kind of investment, stepping back from day-to-day business, will pay off handsomely in terms of improved board performance.
Thanks, Linda. Okay, Bruce.
Hello, my name is Bruce. I go by Bruce Johnson. So I just want to thank you for this opportunity to stand up again in front of you and let you know what's going on with the board and what's going on in my life as a board member. I started this journey as a board member 3 years ago when I stood up in front of all of you at the yacht club and I asked the question, who am I? I'll ask that question again today and I'll answer it. I am you, I am you, I am you, and I am you. I am a villager who wants nothing but the best for this village. For the last 3 years, I've worked on the board, enjoyed every minute of it. Was it a life changer? You bet. There were times when I didn't get to see Brenda in a day because I was doing what I thought I had to do to make this place a better place for all of us. There were times when I didn't get to play golf for weeks because I was trying my best to do what was right for this village. And I promise you, if I'm elected, I will continue to work hard for you and do what I think is best for you and me and the village. For 3 years I've been on the board, and the last 2 years I've served as president. And what an honor that has been to work with 6 other men and women to help make this a progressive and well-maintained village. Before that, I spent 12 years in the village doing just about every type of service project that I could do or that I wanted to do, ranging from working in the Lions Club's vision programs, helping the HOA with their stay and teleco program, working New Villagers Golf, and last but not least, spending days and nights working as a fireman and going and visiting some of you in your houses to make sure that you were all right and that you were in good health. Before that, I worked in the federal government for 34 plus years. And after that, I took a job with a small company as their CFO in the intelligence community. Shh, I can't tell you all about that. While I was on the board the last 3 years, we've accomplished a lot. And some of the things that I personally took on and wanted to make sure they were done. And one of the things was to resolve the problems that we had with our tax sale lots. When I became president 2 years ago, I worked very diligently with our attorney, our general manager, and the county commissioners and the county mayor, working as hard as we could do to make that happen, and we did. Also a strong supporter of the marketing program here. Each and every one of you realize and gain a benefit from the efforts that they're putting into our marketing program. Do you know that there's over 260 new homes in the last 2 years and that our property values have increased by $45,000 over the last 2 years? I've worked hard to resolve some Blue Book disputes between neighborhoods and builders, and I will continue to do that. I helped write and finish the procurement policy that we, the village, do to make sure that all of our procurements are on the uppity up, if you will. And last but not least, when I came on board, I told them that I want to see our advisory committees be advisory committees and not just people who want to find out what's going on in the village. Worked very hard starting with the Peace Act, and I think we've got the Peace Act now where we want it to be. They're true advisors, and they're not afraid to tell us what they think is right and what is wrong. So I hope that we can continue that. Please understand that I think this is one of the best places that we could possibly have ever chosen to live. And I want to see it get better and better and better. I plan to be here a long time. I hope you do too. And I hope that the leaders will take us in the direction that will always keep this in the forefront. Thank you.
Okay, next, Carla Johnson.
Thank you, Sue. I had no idea my alma mater was going to be so viciously attacked. But as I recover from that, I'll tell you that I guess I still want to serve on the board, even though, no, just kidding. Like many of you, I wake up every morning so thankful that we make our home in Tellico Village. And it's no wonder. We're surrounded by Tellico Lake, the Smoky Mountains, top-notch amenities like our beautifully maintained golf courses, and the very best friends and neighbors, well, except for the ones who disrespect Jayhawk basketball. I feel compelled to work together with you to protect not only our excellent quality of life, but also our property values. The good news is we have made a wise choice. We have chosen a successful community led by a volunteer board of directors and a competent staff who are committed to ensuring the long-term health of Tellico Village. We are financially sound, while there are plenty of other developments like ours who would love to be in the financial situation we are. We are also experiencing a healthy rate of growth. When I was the director of a nonprofit education foundation, it was understood that our community must be growing to be truly healthy. That growth helped to ensure increasing tax revenue and, along with excellent public education, protected our property values. The same is true of Tellico Village. Growth brings increased revenue through POA assessments, as well as new residents joining the wellness center, playing golf, renting boat slips, and eating and drinking in our restaurants. These new residents also add to the vibrancy of our community. The results of the recent long-range planning survey show that 67% of us are satisfied or very satisfied with the current projected growth of the village. However, along with the positive aspects of growth, some challenges do arise. To face those challenges, it is imperative that we create a culture of proactive planning and preparation, especially in infrastructure and amenities. When we replace or add facilities, it would be a mistake to design them to meet only current capacity demands. We must build them to accommodate future growth, thereby increasing their useful life and saving money in the long run. Funding will require continued investment in our community through both POA assessments and user fees. Additionally, I support actively marketing POA-owned lots, as they represent potential revenue of nearly $1.2 million annually, and even more when they're improved and occupied. This revenue will significantly contribute to the costs of maintenance and future expansion. Lately, a few folks have asked my thoughts on the marketing program. I support marketing Tellico Village, and our program has been measurably successful. Feedback from our Discovery Package program indicates that visitors are impressed with our village and our amenities, providing excellent value for our property owners by offering so much for so little, meaning a modest POA assessment. Many visitors feel like they are on vacation in a year-round paradise. This brings to life the marketing motto, "It's better in Tellico Village." Even so, a current need is to ensure that prospective property owners continue to have stellar experiences when they arrive. We don't want prospects or new property owners to feel that there is no room for them if they go to play golf at Tenasseee and they can't find a parking space, or if they need a storage space or boat slip but they are full with a waiting list, or they try to attend a new villager social and must park down the street. In these ways and more, marketing, appearance, growth, infrastructure, and amenities are intertwined, and we must strive for the best possible first impressions and experiences for each person who travels to or through Tellico Village. Another priority for me is to enhance internal communications for all property owners. It is vital for any organization to provide information directly to members that is current and accurate. I am looking to work with our staff and volunteers to help streamline communication, providing clear and accurate information that is easily accessible. This is another imperative element to be effective in our efforts to proactively plan and prepare for the future. So please let me hear what's important to you. My telephone number and email address are listed in the Tellico Village directory and can be found on the flyers in the lobby. Thank you very much.
Okay, so now we get to the portion of the meeting where the candidates will give their answers to 3 questions. They'll all answer number 1, which is in the category of priorities. If you could accomplish only one thing if elected, what would that be? What specific skills or knowledge set would you bring to the POA board? The second question is in regard to long-range planning. Given the village's forecasted growth, how do you propose to balance infrastructure and maintenance needs versus new amenities? If the results of the LRP questionnaire differ from your personal views, will you support those results? Third, your role. What is your view of the role of a POA board member? How involved in the day-to-day decision-making should a POA board member be? How involved should the POA staff be in developing action plans to carry out the long-term strategic mission of Tellico Village? And lastly, communications. What is your view of how successful the POA's current process for communicating information to the Tellico Village community is? Are there any specific ways you would increase awareness and transparency, especially on hot topics, as example, the Kahiti Internet, New Tokwa Clubhouse, Wellness Center repairs, or the status of the liquor store? So with that, we'll ask Linda to come back up.
I'm going to try and answer all of them in one way or another. I want to come back to the issue of long-range planning because I still think that is the most critical role for the board, especially right now with the challenges we're facing. I don't see my role, it's not me on the board, it's a we. The board as a whole needs to come to some decisions about how it's going to govern the village. And I think part of that is taking a real hard look every year at how have we done, what do we need to do next year, and have a vision for the future. I wear contacts where one's for near and one's for far. And if I'm only looking with my near-sighted eye, I miss out on a lot. And likewise, if I cover my left eye and all I'm doing is looking out in the future, you know, way down the road, I may miss the cat that's in front of my car. So we need to be doing both. We need to be looking at short-term as well as long-term. My experience with boards is it's a whole lot easier to focus on the short-term, the crisis du jour, than it is to do the hard work of long-range planning. I would just insist that that be something that's done every year. It's really a crime that it's been 8 years since we had a long-range strategic plan in place. So much has changed. We need to be looking into the future beyond 5 or 6 years. We need to be looking at what's this village going to look like in 20 years. Now, we're not going to have perfect vision of it, but we need to be planning for it. Carla mentioned the growth in the village. we've got to stay, if not ahead, at least up with village growth in terms of our amenities. I've been on two kinds of boards. One that was an absolute disaster. I was the president of a statewide nonprofit organization in Ohio. It was a National Association of Social Workers. Most of the 5,000 members of that group were what I call worker bees. They were first-line providers of service. Their hearts were in the right place, but they didn't know anything about governing a board. And when we ran into trouble with our executive director, their inclination was to start doing her work. And I kept having to argue with them. Your job is not to do her work. Your job is to help coach and teach and remediate with her, not do her job. So I'm very clear, I don't want to do the staff's jobs. If the board decides they want to take on some staff responsibilities, it needs to be a very conscious decision that we're really going outside of what a board's normal responsibilities are. That's okay, as long as it's a conscious decision on the part of the whole board. Communication. You know, we have a lot of means of getting information out to the village. I think the telegram is great, the connection is great. I don't know if I agree that next door is great, but it gets a lot of information out. But I think that the board could do a better job of communicating with our property owners around issues, especially the hot button ones. My prime example, we got this big announcement, the POA may run a liquor store. That was made, I think, in May. And we haven't heard one word since then. On the Finance Advisory Committee that I sit on, we've just finished 3 days of looking at departmental budget requests for 2019. Nowhere was it mentioned. So yesterday, at like the last minute, I said, well, you know, where is this thing with the liquor store? It was like, we're still studying it. Well, that's fine. At least once a month or once every 6, put out something that addresses to villagers what you're doing or not doing on an issue like that when you know it's something that people really care about. I want to come back to the issue of skills and knowledge, that what I would like to see the board do to improve its performance. One of the things that I think would be very helpful is this December, once the board election is over, the new board and the chairs of the current advisory committees get together to plan a meeting in January or February with all the members of all the advisory committees. My experience has been that the people that are on advisory committees are extremely committed to the department they're working with, but they often don't have a big picture of what's going on. So what I would like to see happen is we all get together, because advisory council membership changes at the beginning of each year also. Get together, have a chance for the board to really go over the 2019 budget so that people can get a big picture of it, and then have a discussion about what the challenges and opportunities are that we're facing as a village. It would not be a top-down report. It would be a chance to learn from each other. And I think if we did that every year, people are still going to go back to their advisory committees where their passion is, but at least they go back with a little bit better understanding of where we are as a village as a whole. That needs to be also communicated to all of the villagers. The one thing that I've heard since we've been here, oh, we're going to have town halls. The only town hall that I've been aware of is the one that the Strategic Planning Committee did this past summer. We haven't done them. So people fill in what they don't know with whatever rumors they hear or what their neighbors tell them. Thank you.
Okay, Bruce, would you like to come up?
I was sitting there thinking when Linda was talking, and I thought, how can I change all my answers now? So I'll just model through, if you will. Question number one is basically, what would I like to accomplish if I were elected to a board? So it's a little late to answer that question since I've been on the board for 3 years, but what would I like to do the next 3 years? I guess I'll ask that question. You know, last year I helped co-author a paper with the president of the HOA and the president of the New Villagers, and it was entitled All for One and One for All. And people would stop me and say, what the heck are you talking about? The Three Musketeers? And I said, no, I'm talking about the village. I'm talking about the model that we use to develop and build this village. What does it mean? It means that we're all in this boat together. And what I'd like to see over the next 3 years is for everybody that lives in this village to come to understand what that means. What that means is that I may not be a golfer, but golfing around here, especially pristine golf courses like we have, and the ones that we fund through our assessments and through our fees, they improve the values of our homes. What that means is if I were a pickleball player and had to pay for pickleball, only the pickleball players paid for pickleball, we wouldn't have had pickleball. What that means is that if we were boaters and we as boaters had to pay for the docks and only us pay for the docks, we wouldn't have docks. All these amenities that we have and that we enjoy, they're there because we all put our assessments into one pot, and then the board, in their infinite wisdom, chose how we should spend that money. So, you know, it's easy to say that the docks is the only one that makes money, or that golf is losing money hand over fist. But keep in mind that if we didn't have those amenities, that $45,000 increase that I talked about earlier, we wouldn't be enjoying that. We wouldn't have the village that we have today. We're here as a village, and we're all in this boat together. And let's stay in that boat, and let's understand this model so that we don't rock the boat. So it's all for one and one for all. Now, how do I intend to get that message out? If I have to write messages, if I have to write in the quarterly report message from the president, I'm going to do that, because we really, really, really need to understand that we're here as a group of people in one of the best places in the world to live, and we need to support each other. It's a win-win for all of us. You win because you get to play golf. You win because your property values go up. You win because you get to play pickleball. You win because you can sell your house in a hurry. We're in this together, and I hope we stay in this together. And I hope that in the next 3 years, when I ask the question, what I mean when I say all for one and one for all, we'll all know what it means. I've gone over my skills and knowledge, and if you've seen one of my flyers, you understand my background. What you may not see in that and read between the lines is I am a service-oriented person. Hence, I joined the fire department. I'm a service-oriented person. Hence, I joined the Lions Club so that I could help people in this community, especially the greater community of Loudoun County, to help the indigent so that they can have glasses when they can't afford them. What I think I also bring to the table is the fact that I love to negotiate. I know Trump thinks he's the great negotiator, but I would like to challenge him on that because I love to negotiate. In negotiating, that means compromising. If there's one thing that I learned over the 19 years that I've been married to Brenda and the 25 years or so that we've been together is that I'm not right all the time, you know? And as a result, I'm not going to get what I need. Question number 2, balance spending. It's a must that we balance our spending between infrastructure needs and amenity needs. If we're going to stay and remain a progressive and well-maintained village, we're going to have to balance that spending. We're going to have to keep it balanced. You can't favor one at the expense of the other. The way that we accomplish a balance is through smart and cost-effective decisions and through using our assessments and reserve accounts smartly. And I promise you, as long as I'm on the board, I will fight to make sure that we do that. Question number 2 is, what would I do if that's not the way that the survey goes? Right now, I'm on the same side, so it's kind of hard to answer that question. But if I wouldn't, as I pointed out with Brenda, I can negotiate and I can change. Question number 3, what I think the biggest role of being on the board is, I think it really is to think strategically. We've had a lot of discussion on this year's board about that. I think we all think strategically, but it's because most of us came from an operations background. We can't help but get the urge to get down in the weeds occasionally. But every once in a while, one of the other board members needs to pull us up and say, hey, we need to know where this village is going and when and how are we going to get there. And so we really need to pay attention to the strategy. The last part of that question was, should the staff be involved in coming up with our plans, our action plans? The action plans should be formed by the board, the advisory committees, and staff. And the staff, in turn, they're the ones that should execute it with board oversight to make sure it happens. And thank you.
Okay, Carla.
Thank you. Well, I agree that it would be a shame if any of us only could accomplish one thing. However, I touched on this in my introduction, that if I could accomplish one thing, it would be to work together with the board, staff, and residents to create a culture of proactive planning and preparation for growth in our community. It is my belief that growth is essential to the overall health of the village. However, if we are reactive to the challenges it brings, that results in constantly playing catch-up. Working to bring infrastructure and amenities up to capacity demands is often less effective and requires unbudgeted expenditures, potentially pushing other important projects either out of the budget or into the future, which then moves future items even further out and increases costs. Being reactive robs from the future to solve present crises. Proactive planning and preparation avoids the pitfalls of experiencing a feeling of no vacancy in the village. By projecting growth and budgeting for the resulting needs to maintain and expand our infrastructure and amenities, we can stay ahead of the curve instead of playing catch-up, creating better solutions for our facilities, which will prove to be much more cost-effective in the long run. When prospects visit or new property owners move in, they'll be able to take a seat in a meeting, find a parking space for a new villager's social, or to play golf, or rent a storage space or boat slip, and in general know that there is room for them in Tellico Village. This increases satisfaction for new property owners, for new and current property owners alike. It maintains the excellent quality of life in our community and, again, protects our property values. As the communications director of a rapidly growing K-12 school corporation, director of an education foundation, as well as my work with both city government and the Chamber of Commerce, I have worked extensively with volunteer boards, administration, staff, and citizens to create and communicate proactive plans to prepare for growth. I look forward to working together in this capacity with all stakeholders at Tellico Village. As to long-range planning, given the village's forecasted growth, how do we propose to balance infrastructure and maintenance needs? Out of the gate, it's important to note that research shows that people choose to relocate when they become empty nesters or retire based on several factors. The first is location, and the second are amenities. Now, it's my belief that this can only be true if infrastructure is a given. Here's what I mean. We've got location down. We've got it in spades, right? Tellico Lake, the Smoky Mountains, they're a 1-2 punch. And then, along with a mild climate, they provide excellent value for our community's location. Our amenities also are a source of pride. The recently renovated Wellness Center, miles of walking and hiking trails, 3 championship golf courses with stunning views, our clubhouses and restaurants, which are being evaluated and updated to remain desirable, and so much more. The variety offered is attractive to current and prospective property owners. However, if we don't have the capacity to connect additional homes to water and sewer, or the water pressure to support it, our roads are not well maintained, or we don't have access to adequate, affordable utilities, if the appearance and impression of the village deteriorates, then the resulting dissatisfaction will overshadow the positive amenities of the community. So less than desirable infrastructure or amenities will directly, negatively affect buying decisions of prospects. And when enough to opt out, our property values will suffer. The bottom line is that we must balance the needs of infrastructure and appropriate amenities. And we can accomplish this successfully through proactive planning, preparation, budgeting, and funding for continued excellence in both areas. And regarding the long-range planning questionnaire, my opinion was submitted and thereby is reflected in the results. And stating the obvious, these results are just one important factor of many in the decision-making process and must be considered along with significant other data points. These results communicate what Tellico Village residents prefer, and this is valuable feedback of which the board and staff should be mindful when planning for the future. So the role of the POA board member. I believe, in addition to some of the legal and other required elements of the role of the board member, that it should be to provide overall vision and strategic direction for Tellico Village. The board should be minimally involved in day-to-day decision-making, except for sharing direct knowledge and/or experience with the staff for their use in planning and creating solutions. We should challenge our POA staff to be involved in the development of action plans within the outlined parameters of the board's vision and the committees as well to carry out the long-term strategic mission of Tellico Village. This will result in more rewarding careers for our staff members to have latitude to use their education, knowledge, and experience to help develop these action plans rather than simply carry out the plans of others. This also can help free up the board to focus on the vision and strategic planning for the village. I talked a little bit about communications in my intro, and I have information about communications on my bio and my printed flyer as well. So if you have any questions about that, be sure and let me know. But in summary, it started out as a love affair with East Tennessee, then Tellico Village, and it now includes so many new friends and neighbors, and many of you. I'm excited for the opportunity to work together with you to keep Tellico Village the very best that it can be. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so thank you all. I know that that's a lot of preparation, and we really appreciate all of your contributions so far, and look forward to working with you. So, with that, now you'll see that Linda and Diane are standing at the ready for your questions. Now, each question we're going to limit the answer to 2 minutes, so just so as you know. So who has the first question? Joe?
You talked quite a bit, each of you, about amenities and infrastructure. Directed question to all three of you is, what is your position on one of the, it covers, I think, both sides. What's your position on the construction of a new Tokwa clubhouse? And if in favor, when do you think that needs to be completed?
First things first, we need to tend to our sewer issues, our water issues, our road issues. I think we need to build Kahiti. I think we need to put in the new boat slips. I would personally push off doing Tokwa for at least a year.
For quite some time now, I've been heavily involved in the Tokwa Clubhouse and the Kahiti project, Kahiti Community Center. And the first year I was on the board, I made the recommendation that we do both of them in the same year. Nothing's changed my mind. I believe after looking at the finances and looking at the state of our infrastructure, the sky is not falling in my mind. Yes, we have to pay attention to it, and yes, we have to maintain this village, but we also have to grow. I believe that we should work with our CFO as a board to figure out how we can get these things done. I believe we have the wherewithal to do all of them. It's just when we do them and the order in which we do them so that we have enough reserves left over. So in my mind, we pay attention to sewer, we get it done. We pay attention to water, we get it done. We pay attention to the buildings, maintaining the buildings like the Wellness Center. I do think we have a wherewithal to do it, and if, as I told the board earlier this week, I believe that we should probably start the Tokwa Clubhouse in 2019, toward the end of 2019, so that when we convert a loan, if we get it, from a construction loan to a permanent loan, we will have the Wellness Center paid off, and then we'll also start the project to do the Kahiti in 19 as well. So we manage our reserves, we manage our assessments. I think that we have the wherewithal to do it and do it in an orderly manner.
I agree. I think that it's important to, as you heard me say when I answered the other questions, Joe, that it's important that our amenities remain a source of pride, and they also are adequate for capacity demands and for growth. And the thing about the Tokwa Clubhouse is it's a large enough project that if we push it off, it's going to cost more money. And so those are the kinds of things that we have to be really cognizant about and intentional about when we're making those plans is, do we push it off and save the money this year but end up spending more next year because it needs to be done anyway? So the short answer is I am in favor of rebuilding the Tokwa Clubhouse. I think it's really, really important for not only just the clubhouse itself, but for the golf course and for golf revenue and for the satisfaction of our members and the value of our members to their property, that they have these amenities that are a source of pride and that are just adequate to meet the capacity demands that we already have today.
Thank you. Another question?
I'm Joe Marlette. A lot has been talked about over the years about our amenities and how they're paid for, combination of some of the assessments and user fees. So I'd like to understand how each of you see how we pay for amenities, if you agree with that current process, or if you don't think that the part of the assessment ought to go to amenities, how would you pay for the amenities that we have?
Who put Bruce in charge? Who goes first? All right, no, I'm happy to go first because I do actually have some strong feelings about this. I mean, I think that we could probably all agree that to some degree we chose Tellico Village because of the quality of the amenities. And that said, I feel like it's pretty unrealistic to expect to run amenities as a break-even or a profit center. And I mean, in a perfect world, it'd be great if we could do that. But in order to maintain the quality of life that we all desire, protect our property values, we're going to have to continue to balance the funding of those amenities with with a combination of POA assessments and reasonable user fees that will continue to have high participation in those amenities. A perfect example of that is when we were in the budget meetings, Simon was presenting the cost of the wellness center, of membership to the wellness center compared to the cost of some other fitness centers in the region. Our cost was the lowest, I believe, of that comparison. And somebody made the comment that in some of those other fitness centers, they're really just interested in selling memberships and they don't care if people show up. In fact, if they don't show up, it costs them less and they make more money off of those memberships. In Tellico Village, the mission of the recreation department is to get participation. So we want people to join the wellness and participate. That's an amenity. And that's something that adds value and enhances our quality of life. And so I believe we're going to have to continue to invest in those through a balance of POA assessments and user fees.
Yes, ma'am. I think that basically we understand that when we have an amenity or when we have a piece of infrastructure that we need to put money into, that money all comes from either user fees or assessments. We take those assessments and what we don't use in a given year, we put into our reserve accounts. And we let those build up so that hopefully over time, as we need an amenity, we can use those reserves coupled with our borrowing power if we have to be able to make that amenity happen. It goes back to what I was saying earlier, that we're all in this together. It's all for one and one for all. We can't put the burden of having a new amenity on the group that's going to be using that amenity alone. If we do, we'll have trouble building amenities in the future, and we'll become a stagnant village. What we need to do is look to see what we need to keep us on the forefront of being a progressive, energetic, and desirable place to live, and then make decisions smartly so that we can use the monies that we have, the monies that we need to borrow. We can set assessments that are reasonable and user fees that are reasonable so that we can actually afford to do these things.
Excuse me. 30 seconds. I'm not Pollyannish enough to think that we'll ever get to the point where amenities will be self-supporting. However, I think we can challenge ourselves to do better in terms of how much subsidy goes to any of our amenities. Mike Colacone and Pat White have set up an ad hoc golf committee comprised of golfers and non-golfers, the goal of which is to increase utilization of the golf courses. I think that's a great model. You know, the old saying is, if you keep doing the same thing over and over again, that's the definition of insanity. You know, if you're not getting the results you want, you need to look at doing some things differently. I think we can do better. At least in my time in the village, there seems to be kind of an acceptance that, oh, so what if the subsidy for any amenity goes up each year? It's like, yeah, we need to challenge that. We need to be trying to think outside the box more, get more people involved that have some expertise in particular areas, and challenge them to look out for new ways that we can decrease the subsidy without harming the quality of our amenities.
Another question?
Thank you. Last year, the board decided to increase the monthly POA fee by 3%. Versus a 5% max. Part of the justification on that was that the board said, well, we're going to increase ECC fees on new construction, and that'll make up the 180 grand. In lieu of the fact that we do need to increase reserves for road, sewer, but at the same time move forward with Tokwa and Kahiti facilities. If you are elected to the board, so this question is directed to Carla and Linda, if you are elected to the board, well, maybe you too, Bruce, see what your position is this year. Would you favor a 5% increase, or would you go with something less than that?
Oh, yeah, I'll go first. The preliminary budget that's being developed, and it's a long way from being finalized, contains a 2 3/4% inflation rate. That's simply to pay for the cost of goods and services going up, okay? So that doesn't leave any room for new amenities. I support this year that we have a 5% POA increase.
I'll go.
You go.
Okay.
No, you go.
Actually, last year it was at 2.5%. And the reason why we did that last year as a board was because we knew that there were some things coming down the pike that we were going to have an influx of cash that was equal to or more than the difference between 5% and 2.5%. So, you know, we knew that was coming in, and the board at that time chose not to essentially lay 5% on the community just because we could. And what we ought to do as a board is that we ought to always look and go through the budget like we have done the last 2 years with a goal of making the assessment equal to the amount of the inflation rate. And that's what we started out with. Now, as we go through this and we see that there's things that we need to get done in 19 and that we can't do that and have enough money left to feed our reserve accounts the way we want to so that we can do other things in the year 2020, 21, 22, then we're going to have to adjust that inflation rate. And that's the goal, that's the steps that we're taking. Start out at 2.75, 3. I think it's 3 is what we agreed to, and then make it more if we have to go. But we shouldn't just always say that because the CNRs allow us to do it, that we ought to do it. What we ought to look at is what our needs are this year and what our needs are going to be in the future, and can we get to those needs, and what percentage amounts of increase do we need to be able to get there. And that's what we're doing through this budget process. It may turn out to be 4%, may turn out to be 5%, but you can bet that when we get there, it will be well justified.
I think there's a pitfall to looking at things the way at what you need right now. There are times when Tellico Village has been in a time of stagnant population. There wasn't a lot of growth going on, right? I know that you can't see the numbers on this sheet, but you can see the direction of these bars. That represents growth in Tellico Village over the last 5 years. By only raising the assessments 2.5% last year, while that was, you know, on the one hand, it was kind of nice that the assessment stayed low. On the other hand, we never get that. Those assessments are compounded. So now the basis for next year's assessments are, you know, at what point? 1.5%, 1%, even lower than what it could have been if we had gone with a little bit higher assessment increase last year. So that said, based on the current economy, based on the current projected rate of growth, based on the projects that we need to do to be proactive in preparing for that growth, I agree that we need to have a larger increase this year. And my knee-jerk reaction is that the 5% is going to be the right number. When we get through with the budgeting process, we may find it to be slightly lower than that, but that's my initial reaction to that.
The last 3 or so years, we've had a very active marketing program that has given us some great results, I think, and has basically cost the POA no money. It hasn't cost the property owners any money. It's self-generating all of our activity. So I guess I'd like to know how each of you feel about continuing with that program. Do you think it's about right? Do you want to cut the spending to that program, or do you have a better idea?
Okay, I'll start this time. I think it's evident some of the things I said earlier that I support our marketing program. When I first came on the board 3 years ago, I lost some friends because I told them that I thought we could cut some funds from the marketing budget. In retrospect, I probably should have been a little bit less blunt about it and should have said that we should look at all of our departments. Over the last 3 years, as I pointed out, our marketing department has done a great job, a really, really great job. And unbeknownst to most of us in here, if you look back at all the budgets over the last 3 years or so, they have not increased their budget a penny during that time. It's always remained constant because they figured out how to spend the money that they've got and how to spend it smartly. They have also showed us that as a result of the programs that they have, where they have the builders participating with us, we have actually been able to reduce the amount that we're actually going to marketing, because that offsets the amount, that $400-something that shows up on the budget line. It's reduced by the amount of intake that we get from our partners, the realtors and the builders. So I support it. I think it's the right thing to do. We spent an awful lot of money and an awful lot of effort to get those lot sales back, to get clean titles to them, et cetera. And now we need to promote those lots and sell them. And the best way to do that is through having a strong marketing program.
I've been married to a real estate broker for 28 years, 27 years. And if I've learned one thing about real estate from my husband, it's that marketing needs to occur both in good markets and bad. We've been really lucky the last 4 or 5 years with the economy, low interest rates, but you know, and he tends to be, you know, the optimist, and I tend to be the glass is half full. But we are going to, you know, the economy does have peaks and troughs. We aren't going to, if you looked at the stock market the last week, I'm sure there's some people that are going, oh my God, what's happening? Marketing is really important, especially when things go south in the economy. I hope to be here another 26 years. We moved here we bought our first lot in 1992. So 26 years ago, I hope in 26 years, I'll be able to sell my house for way more than we paid for it. And part of that's going to happen only if we continue to market the village.
Well, we agree on this one. I definitely support marketing Tellico Village. I think there's a couple of guys that play huge roles in that marketing effort who are really, really bad at retiring. They work really hard and they monitor that, and they do a really, really great job of making sure that we're being effective and that we're spending that money wisely and that we're getting some bang for our buck. And I appreciate their volunteer efforts in that regard, even though I still think they're bad at retiring. So that said, I mean, the fact of the matter is what these other two candidates said is right. On the other side of that coin, I think it's really imperative for us to make sure that the first impression they get, once we market to these people and we get them here, that the first impression they get and the experience they get is equal to the effort that we put into the marketing. So we just really need to protect that, make sure we have great training for our tour guides and great information and a great experience when those people get to Tellico Village.
Yes, I'm Richard Corso, and my wife and I have been here less than 100 hours, so we're newbies, I guess. The question that is running through my mind is, I heard you guys up there and the candidates talk about the importance of strategic planning. I've heard all these questions coming from out here on the tyranny of the urgent about what's happening right now. And Noah had to be more concerned about the woodpecker inside than the rain outside. How are you guys going to balance that so that the strategic planning is there and not just the woodpecker on the inside?
Well, I would say that the first step toward a strategic plan, or at least executing one, we've done a great job this year of putting the Long Range Advisory Committee has done a great job of putting together a plan, laying out a plan. They accepted the challenge that the board put on them to come back to us this year with a plan, and not to make it years 1 through 6, make it 6 and beyond, and they've done a great job to do that. Now, the first thing as far as executing that plan is this year, because if you don't start this year planning for the future, you won't have the monies that you're going to need to do it out in the future. So it all goes back to those assessments that we talked about. It all goes back to how we spend our money this year, how we build our reserve accounts, and how we keep our line of credit up and strong so that when we need to get out into year 7, 8, 9, 10, and we need to do things like build a new amenity or replace the sewer system, we have the wherewithal to do it. We're in great financial shape now, but you can get out of great financial shape in a hurry if you don't pay attention now. So starting to build where we can execute that plan that they've come up with starts this year in this year's budget. And I think that all of us that are working on that budget need to keep that in mind.
I agree with Bruce. I don't have any argument whatsoever with that, but I sit back and I look at unplanned, unbudgeted, huge amount of money that we're going to need to spend on the wellness center to get it back in shape. We're looking at somewhere between $600,000 and $750,000, or maybe more. And it wasn't in the budget this year. So we've got to take care of our crown jewel, which is the wellness center. We cannot allow it needs to be in tip-top shape when we do bring in people on discovery tours. So my philosophy, I guess, is you don't start adding additions to your house when your roof is caving in. And I don't agree with Bruce that the roof hasn't caved in. I think $750,000 of unplanned expenditures for the wellness center is a major issue that has really not been discussed very well with our property owners.
If you've only been here 100 hours, you missed out on the survey that the Long Range Strategic Planning Committee did. They did a great job on that. And you guys, I don't know if you've read the summary of results, but 40% of the people in the village responded to that, which is a huge sampling. And it's just going to provide a really great tool for us going forward. And they're even fine-tuning some of the results of that as well. So, you know, that's the kinds of things that happen with the Wellness Center are just a bummer. I mean, you just wish that kind of stuff wouldn't happen. You wish you didn't have to spend the money on that. But I still think it's really important for us to not too quickly jump to the conclusion that the sky is falling. The roof is caving in, but the sky isn't falling. So we can continue to look at those things and make sure that we're making wise choices and pushing things out if we have to, but not if we don't have to, again, because in the long run, we can spend more money by pushing them out. So obviously we can't overtax the resources that we have, but I just hope that we take a good hard look at that and make sure that we make the best decision that we can.
Hi. I've heard each of you, I believe, say that you support or recognize at least that we need additional boat docks in the common dock system. Presently, we've got 650 slips, plus 2 kayak racks, numerous PWCs, so supporting probably approximately 800 families in the village. So it's quite popular. Now, our present practice for financing this endeavor has included paying the bills every year, maintenance, administrative services fee, the reserves, about 50 grand a year roughly, and putting the rest of it, also depreciation, but putting the rest of it into the general fund, the excess revenue. And the excess revenue typically comes in at about, close to approaching $100,000 a year. For the short term at least, I would like your opinion on whether it makes sense or not to divert that excess revenue that's presently going to the reserves of the village, the general fund that is, and diverting it to the reserves for the docks until we at least get these new docks built that we're going to need. We're out of docks in Loudoun County, and we've only got a handful of openings at Kahidi at the present time, and there's a wait list.
I've gotten a quick lesson on this whole issue of what happens to the money that comes in for the docks. And I'm not sure if I've got all the facts correct, but here would be my understanding and where I think we should go with it. We need to build those docks. People are moving to this village, want to buy boats or bring boats, and if we can't accommodate them, they're going to go somewhere else. Simple as that. In the big scheme of things, the cost for those docks is relatively small. I believe the figure was $170,000 to put in 34 more slips versus $2.3 million for a new Tokwa clubhouse. So relatively speaking, it's a minor investment with a huge potential payoff. I would want to see the revenue that comes in for the docks stay in the dock revenue, stay with the docks and not be used to support the general revenue.
Well, obviously I disagree. That goes back to my statement that we all need to support each other. Now, the dock folks over the last year and started the year before, they came before the board and told us the situation, reinforced, if you will, by the long-range planning. We are aware, the board's aware, that we need more docks. We even talked about covered docks last year. Now, there were a lot of issues still out there that were not resolved. We tasked them to go back and come with us with information like, if we build 30 docks right now, how much longer is it going to be before we have to build 30 more, 30 more, 30 more, 30 more? look at it over the long term and see if there's something that we can do that will resolve this question and put us in a good place where that when we fill up those 34, we'll be in a position to satisfy new people coming in. We tasked them to go off and look at things like off-water storage. And they did. The biggest problem there is TVA. Where would TVA let us put something? So it's not just as simple as over the long haul of building docks. We can build docks. We got the money to do it. Whether we put the money in the dock reserves or we put it in other places, we can come up with the resources in conjunction with everything else we need to do. If building docks is something we need to do, we can build those docks. But what we need to look at is across the whole picture and see, how's it going to be 5 years from now? How's it going to be 10 years from now? And let's have a plan to do it. If off-water storage is what we need to do, let's pursue that. If we need short-term, like build 34, let us build them. But let's keep an eye on what we need to do over the long haul and not just get hung up on satisfying an itch over the next year.
Absolutely agree with that sentiment. We have to be proactive in planning for growth. Right now, in the relation to docks, we're being reactive. Our docks are full. We have a waiting list, and I learned the other day that we probably have a waiting list that doesn't represent how many people are really waiting, because some people have taken their name off the list because they've taken their boats and put them somewhere else. So I think it's important to communicate to people that how much information that waiting list gives us when we're in the budgeting process and trying to figure out, what we need to build and what the demand is for things. And I definitely agree. I consider that an amenity, how you work the budget. I mean, if you take that $100,000 that you put into the general fund and take it out and put it back in the dock fund, well, you've got to make up that $100,000 because it's being budgeted. It's accounted for. So we have to figure that out, however that works. But as I've probably beaten that to death, that I believe we have to proactively plan and prepare for the future, and that definitely includes building boat docks. We don't want people to come to our village and decide to go somewhere else because they can't get a storage space. You guys know there's a longer waiting list for that, and they can't get a boat dock. We got to have vacancy. We got to have room for this growth.
Okay, one more question.
How do you resolve issues through creative solutions when you have a staff that's been in place for many years? The board changes, but a lot of the POA staff does business the way they've done it since they've been there, many years. Creative solutions as opposed to just, use the same contractor we did last year, do the same thing. I hear you talking a lot about strategic planning and looking ahead, but the solutions need to be creative. How do you encourage that? How do you do that as a board to pull in creative solutions?
I'll go. Yes, it's true that our staff has been around for several years, especially our key people. Our general manager has been around 25 years. Some of our other guys have been in here, and that's not all bad. They know our system and they know what to do to keep it well maintained. It's up to the board to set the direction on how the GM and the staff works. I'll give you an example this year. The board noticed that we wanted the staff to start doing a little bit different in how they report to us on the status of things in the village. So we asked the GM, and all of our experience that we've had, we asked him to start doing something called management by walking around, meaning going around to each facility that we have and looking at it and telling us what he sees out there that needs to be fixed to keep this as a progressive and well-maintained village. We then tasked him to come back on a quarterly basis in front of you, the people, and tell us what he saw, what is the state of the village. That's one thing. The other thing that we asked him to do to make change so that we can keep him current, we asked them to start doing management by exception. And that is if you start seeing patterns or you start seeing trends that you should pick up on and says that is an alarm that's going off, or it could be an alarm if you let it go further, then you start needing to track that so that you can keep the board apprised as to what's going on. If you see tarry stuff dripping from the ceiling in the wellness center, or if you see rust starting to form on some of the pipes in the wellness center maintenance room, then those are some things that you need to be pay attention. Now, the GM, did he say, no, that's a bad idea? No, he recognized it and he has implemented it, and that's what we do. The board gives them ideas and he implements them.
I'm delighted to hear what you just said, Bruce, but it concerns me that it's the first time I've heard it. That kind of information is the exact kind of information I think some of the village wants to hear about. You know, after 25 years, it's time that he get out there and see what's happening in the village. I fully support it. The general manager is the only employee the board has, the only employee. Everybody else reports to the general manager. So there needs to be very, very clear expectations set by the board for the general manager of what we want to see him doing. And I'm delighted to hear that you all have set some of those goals for him.
I agree. Those are great goals, and I think that we should continue to challenge our staff to think about things differently, to do things differently than they've been done in the past. Just say, you know, play devil's advocate and say, if you couldn't do it the way you did before, you know, what solution could you find? I mean, those are just kind of exercises that we go through, and you know, I agree with Bruce that there are absolute positives to having people that stay around, you know, for a long time. They have experience, they understand the village, they have been through things before, they know what's worked and what hasn't worked in the past, and those are all really, really valuable things for us as we go along. But as the board leadership, I just feel like we should continually challenge ourselves, challenge the staff, create goals, create objectives, and then, you know, monitor that and see what works and move forward from there. So I agree with I love the management by walking around, and I had heard that before, and I had even talked to, Beth had mentioned that was something that they were doing, and she encouraged me to send her some pictures one time when I complained about some signs on a golf course and said I thought they looked ugly. She said, send me pictures, and they made prettier signs. So those are good ways that I think that we can continue to progress in that area.
With that, I'd like to thank everybody. I'd like to thank Linda and Bruce and Carla again for your time and for your contribution to the community. And I'd like to thank all of you for coming today. So with that, we will adjourn the meeting. Thank you so much.